be here today. All right. So first of all, hello to everybody. Hope you all had a wonderful Pesach and that it was joyful, however it was that you celebrated it. Ours was very quiet, and I said, just the two of us. And but we did everything. I made turkey the first night, brisket the second night. We had chicken soup, we had matzo balls, we had everything I would normally make, and then we just feasted on the food for the rest of Yom and just finished our leftovers last night. Actually, now we're having lasagna tonight. So yeah, and the davening was beautiful and the weather was gorgeous. It was hard not to be with anybody. And we always change our living room and dining room, which I saw posting on Facebook, a really great article. That's like a girl who grew up that because they always had so many people, they changed their living room and dining room so they could do that. So, which is what we do also. And last year, even though there was just the two of us, we still changed our living and dining because that's what makes it feel like Pesach. So in this article, this woman said, that, when she suggested like not changing the house, that she said, you might as well have said, let's have bread for the Seder. That it was like, what are you talking about? How can you have a Seder without changing the house? So we still we keep it saved. So it's changed now and we'll keep it until Shabbos, just to kind of have it carry over and just so it feels different in the house. So it felt like Yom Tov. So that's what we did. And God willing, it will be different next year. Yes, Marla.
Quick question, if you don't mind.
My pleasure.
What's the symbol of a potato? I've heard you can use potato on your Seder plate. Could you just tell me what that replaces?
It is karpas. So the karpas is any vegetable that over which you would say the blessing Borei Peri Ha'adama that grows in the ground. So you could use carrot, you could use potato. That's how we get celery and parsley but you can also use potato. Our family, I grew up I don't remember, it's been so long. One of us grew up a celery family and one grew up a parsley family. So we have parsley and celery, but people do potatoes as well. Yeah, you're welcome. All right. So now what we are in, and we didn't have a chance because we weren't meeting, but we didn't have a chance to start, which is that we are now in Sfirat HaOmer. We are in the counting of the Omer, that period of time that takes us from the leaving of Egypt to the arriving at Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, which is the sole purpose for our leaving from Egypt. So I know many people have liked to turn Passover into something else, but if you look in the Torah, the only reason we were taken out was so we could serve God at Mount Sinai. That was when the burning bush was at Mount Sinai. And when God first hires Moshe for the job against his wishes, he says, you will come back here to serve me on this mountain. That was the whole point of it. So we don't get there immediately. We go through a process of these 49 days that take us from leaving Mitzrayim to getting to Mount Sinai. So now we are 9 days of the counting of the Omer. Now, what's interesting is what I'd like to share with you today are some ideas that I heard from Rabbi Moshe Shapiro of blessed memory. They've just released some recordings of his classes. I've read things that he's done before. This was my first time to actually get to hear him, which was really exciting. I'm very sad that he is no longer alive. But anyway, he talks about the Sfirat HaOmer and about the counting of the Omer. And we're going to talk about some things. Sometimes the most interesting thing is to ask the most basic question, because we take for granted what we do all the time. It's like, yeah, we're counting the Omer. So whether you have yet counted the Omer or you haven't yet, I hope this will still be interesting to you and you may be interested in beginning to count the Omer. So in the Torah, it says we are supposed to count. And who would like to offer, if you have an idea, what is it we are counting? When we say the blessing, al Sfirat HaOmer, the counting of the Omer, what are we counting? Anybody can unmute and say, what are we counting?
Days to when we left Egypt to when we got the Torah.
Exactly. And so specifically we are counting days. And what else are we counting?
Weeks.
Weeks. We're counting days and weeks. And the holiday that we are going to is called Shavuot. Shavuot means weeks. So, and if you look on some calendars, it'll say Feast of Weeks. Okay, sometimes it'll say Feast of Weeks, and that is because Shavuot means weeks, but we're counting days and weeks. So first of all, why are we counting days and weeks? It's like, we're counting two different things. We're counting days, we're counting 49 days, and we're counting 7 complete weeks. So count one or the other. Count the days or count the weeks. So if we're counting two different things, then shouldn't there really be two different blessings? Al Sfirat of the counting of days and Al Sfirat, the counting of weeks. But we don't. We just say Al Sfirat HaOmer. The word Sfirat, the root is Samach Pei Resh, which is the root of the word lisfor, which is to count. We are counting, is called counting the Omer, which we aren't even counting the Omer, we're counting days and weeks. So the question is, why are we counting days and why are we counting weeks and how are we counting them? So let's just talk first about how we count them. If I were to say to you, today is the blank day of the Omer, and I just said what it was, most people would say today is the 9th day of the Omer, right? Today's the 9th day of the Omer. There's just one thing. 9th, if you're doing numbers, this is one of the things I do remember from math, there are ordinal numbers and there are cardinal numbers, right? Ordinal numbers means order, as in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. Cardinal numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And when do we use them? How do we use them differently? What's the difference between saying 9 and 9th? So anybody can unmute and say, what's the difference between 9 and 9th?
I guess when they're in a series.
Okay, so in a series, it's like one is we're talking about literally the order of something in order. So there's a
The
series.
1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th,
Right.
6th, 7th.
Exactly. And when would you use 9? When would you use 9 as opposed to 9th?
When you have a number of things. I have 9 bananas.
Okay, I have 9 bananas. There's no order about that. That tells you what your quantity is, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's very interesting because we said that what we would normally say is today is the 9th day of the Omer, but that's not what it says. It's just that that's how we're used to saying it. But if you look in any kind of an Omer, or I should say an official Omer counter book, or if you're looking in your
Today is
Siddur,
day 9. Today is day 10.
9.
Right.
Okay, and it starts up, and in fact, it says, it doesn't even say today is day 9. It says today is 9 days. Okay, today is 9 days, which is even different than day 9, because day 9 is just a little bit fancier way of saying 9th day. But we're not saying it's the 9th day, we're saying it's 9 days. This is an accumulation number. So numbers that are cardinal, the 9 days, that's an accumulation number. That tells you how many you have. An ordinal number tells you in what sequence they are, which has nothing to do with anything that we're talking about. Except it feels like it because we're literally counting days between one thing and another. And we tend to think of elapsed time as being sequential. But this is saying it's not sequential. It is what's the word? It's acquisitional. We are acquiring the days. It's not the order of them. Okay. So if I say I have 9 days now, that's a possession. Okay, I have 9 days. It's not that it's the 9th day. Okay, do you see how that can really dramatically change what we're doing? Instead of going from here to there, I'm trying to get there, and this is just the amount of elapsed time, and that's the order. We're going in a different place, which is that we are accumulating. So now we are at 9 days. That's what this is. But then it's like 9 days, but then it also says that we are also then in, this is also equivalent to, which are for 9 days, which are 1 week and 2 days. Again, telling us it's not the order, it's the accumulation of them. But again, now we're going to talk about why weeks and why days. So there's something interesting that happens when we are accumulating something. There's a difference between accumulating things that are in discrete details, individual things, versus accumulating something that is turning into a something. Okay? So I can acquire, I don't know, whatever. I can acquire things in my pantry, doesn't necessarily turn it into a meal. I could write words down like all over the place. It doesn't necessarily turn it into something meaningful. So here's what's very interesting. The word Sfirat Omer, which is about counting this process and counting this accumulation, is also related to the word Sefer. And what's a Sefer? A Sefer is a book, okay? What's a book? It says a book is exactly what we're talking about. A book is a meaningful combination of individual details of letters, and I see my co-author is on with us now. Tina is on. What is a book anyway? A book is an accumulation of put together of meaningful letters, words, sentences, paragraphs, and chapters that hopefully makes up something that has a wholeness to it. So that's why the Torah, even though it doesn't flip pages, is called a Sefer Torah. The Torah scroll is called a Sefer Torah because it is all individual things, but it's all put together into one meaningful package. This is what it means, Sfirat Omer, the counting of these days and the counting of these weeks, is that we're saying that days make weeks, weeks make months, months make years, years make a lifetime. We want our moments, day by day, moment by moment, to turn into a sefer. We want it to hang together and have an underlying thread of unity that brings it all together. The white spaces, the dark spaces, the chapters that are scary, the times that are challenging, all of that is to turn it into a sefer. When we're talking about Al Sfirat Omer, we're talking about paying attention on a daily basis to what our sefer of our life is all about. Now, our sefer is interesting in that at any moment it's complete. Like my sefer up to right now is complete. It's not missing anything because I'm what I am today on whatever today, I don't even know what day it is other than the 9 days of the Omer, because I've been saying 9th also, but I'm not going to say that anymore. Today is the 6th of April. Okay, so my life from May 30th, 1956 until the 6th of April, 2021 is complete in and of itself, because we can only live and be in the book as it is being written. Tomorrow will be another day, and we don't even say what tomorrow's day is. Like if you said to me, well, what's tomorrow? I don't say that. I would say, well, today was 9 days. And then you can figure that out, what tomorrow will be. Because I can't say what tomorrow is before tomorrow actually is. That part of the Sefer has not yet been written. Now, people use all the time a metaphor. We write the days of our lives in our book, each one of us, but we kind of tend to think of it just metaphorically. This is real. This is real. And every day of Sfirat Omer, it's like we are writing our Sefer and the Sefer of our story, and we're putting in it days and weeks, minutes and seconds, and you could go on and on to what it is moment by moment of what is getting put into this Sefer. And when you're writing a Sefer, the goal is to have all the details that do hang together. That's why they have editors who go through and see, like, did you start talking about a character that you actually never introduced? I had that with my master's thesis. long time ago, in the days where you had to take things to a typist. Boy, am I glad those days are over. Take it to a typist to type. And my husband was my editor. And I started talking about something, blah, blah, blah. It was on mass transit in Denver. That was the topic of my master's thesis in economics. And I was talking about something, and I said, and as we discussed in chapter 4, blah, 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 blah. I'm going into all this detail. My husband is editing. He said, there is no chapter 4. I'm like, well, of course there's a chapter 4 because it covers this, this, and this, and this. He's like, it's not here. It was only in my head. I hadn't actually written it. So I had to, after the fact, write chapter 4 that I was referring to in later chapters because I hadn't actually written it. So this is like, oh, that's interesting. How much of our life is like that, where we think that something is in existence and we maybe want it to be, but it actually isn't there yet. So having this Sefer of our lives is to make sure that what we want to be in the Sefer is not the invisible chapter 4 that doesn't really exist, but that is something that we are putting in. Marla.
Does this time, are we supposed to really be thinking about ourselves and preparing ourselves to go to Mount Sinai and to be in front of God? So it's really an important time, basically.
It's a very important time. And the way we are preparing for it is specifically through focusing on different midot, certain character qualities in ourselves, the 7 sfirot. So those are also from the same root of sfirot, the 7 spheres, the divine emanations. And we're going to talk about the divine emanation that we're in today because we're in a very powerful one of Gevorah, Sheba Gevorah. So here we are counting sfirot, doing this. I am a Sefer person. I am a book person, getting ready to be at Mount Sinai to receive basically the Sefer Torah of Torah. But we have to put ourselves, we have to show up for that. And we have to be able to understand that we are going through this process and we're trying to write our story and live our story, because that's the other piece, is there's writing a Sefer and then there's reading the Sefer that you've been given. And how we read our Sefer of our lives is also up to us. I don't remember the joke exactly, but there's like a joke about a telegram that it depends on where you put the comma and the period of whether it's bad news or good news. It's like where you stop the sentence. I should have looked up the joke. I probably couldn't have even told it, but you know what I'm talking about. It's something like, it's something like money for the kid needs money. Is like, dear dad, send money now. You know, another one is, dear dad, send money now. I need you. And it's like totally different emotion. So one is belligerent and whatever, chutzpahdik, and the other one is kind. So it says, this is why when we read the Torah, that the Torah is called a Sefer, that is God's Sefer for us. It's like, this is the story. This is how I want you to read the world. This is how I want you to act and behave in these circumstances. These are the choices I want you to make in order to get the most out of this experience called your life. It's a Sefer. However, it says everybody reads the Sefer a little differently. Some are legitimate readings and some are not. It says if you don't say the words in the right sentence correctly, you will come away with the wrong understanding, which is really bizarre because in a Sefer Torah, there's no punctuation. Now, I don't know what kind of editor did that. It's like, you've got to be kidding. Wouldn't you think if you really wanted people to know exactly what they were supposed to get, that you would make sure that there were periods and that you would end the sentence? Because we know what happens, even if something is a poorly written newspaper article. If a comma is missing, it totally throws off the meaning of what is said. Etta.
I just thought that you get what you are. So depending on where your level is, you'll be able to get all kinds of interesting things. And as you learn more, that's why it doesn't get boring as you get
That's
older.
exactly, you are absolutely right. So, and within that, there is a structure, which is why when the Torah is being read, if you notice, there are always two people standing on either side of the Torah reader to correct them. And they're not correcting as much for the music as for the correct pronunciation of the words and where the sentence ends. Because a sentence that is ended in the wrong place can totally change the meaning, as can the different vowels or the understanding. If you have something that, I can't think of anything just off the top of my head of something that can mean two different things depending on the vowels that are used. Because since Hebrew is the letters, that's the other thing that's not there. There are no vowels. It's just the letters. So like talk about something that is ripe for a problem, it's the Torah. And yet there's no problem with the Torah because we have an unbroken tradition that tells us exactly how the words are to be pronounced and where the sentence begins and ends. And not only that, but because of the musical notation tells us where the commas are as well and which things are meant to be emphasized. Otherwise, you could come up with like a completely bizarre interpretation of what the Torah actually says. So having all that is what guarantees our sefer is read correctly. And still within that, people will still, and it's actually better to have an oral tradition that tells us what to do, because a written tradition, mistakes can be made in transposing, transcribing. But when you have two people standing there, and the Jewish people are amazing. So if anybody who's ever been a Torah reader or who's been in a synagogue where there are Torah readers, is like the Jewish people like jump down the throat of the person who is reading the Torah should they make a mistake. They're like, no, it's like, as if they jumped off a cliff or something. It's like, no. It's like, why do people get so upset? It's because it's important. If it's not done correctly, it can change the meaning of what's there. So this is the sefer. Marla.
I found one. Let's eat, grandma, or let's eat grandma, no comma.
Yes, exactly. And that's a simple one. Never mind, a complex commandment about, how we're supposed to be behaving is like, what? So you can imagine. Very good. So having this, it says all of these details. So you can't have a book without the details. You can't have a sefer without the details, but the details alone don't make a sefer. It's only when the details are put together into a klal, into a whole thing, and it's shalem in its whole, then you get something. And the truth is that's true about our lives too. We can have all these kind of like random details. And yes, everybody's life is filled with like randomness. And some people are even advocate, random acts of kindness. We're not actually so big on random acts of kindness. We're much better on intentional acts of kindness. Do things in a way that is, you are creating something intentionally. It's the kind of the mindfulness and intentionality. Sfirat HaOmer, the counting of the Omer, involves nothing but intention, especially after preparing for Pesach, which how long does that take to prepare for? Like weeks? Some people months, some people start at Hanukkah and make me crazy. Like, oh, have you, I cleaned my bedroom for Pesach. I'm like, please, I just got the wax out of my menorah. So like, what are you talking about? So like people do this, or they take it King Supers, they put the Passover things out like right after Halloween. I don't know, they make you crazy. I just walk like that. I don't have to look at it. So here you have this holiday that is so intense. We're leaving Egypt. That's intense. But how do you prepare to go to Sinai? You would think that would be the work holiday. It's like, no, that's when we focus on intention. That's when we're talking about, I'm writing my sefer and I'm reading my sefer. I'm interpreting the events of my life and I'm telling a story about them. What am I going to say about it? I get to choose. It's like the editorial board, op-ed. I get to say what my opinion is and be the editorial and editorialize about my life. So I'm not editorializing, I'm just telling you the facts. It's like, that's never true. That is never true. People are always editorializing. That's what conversation is an ongoing editorializing on life of what I'm doing, what other people are doing, what's happening, even the weather, the whole thing is editorializing. So that's how we read the story. So during Sfirat HaOmer, we're really being asked to read the story of our own lives, even how we experience and tell the story of our enslavement. We tell the story of the enslavement in the context of our redemption. We don't sit and cry at the Seder table, no matter how much pain the Jewish people went through during their 210 years of bondage. We don't sit and cry. We have a ceremonial dip in salt water, and we take a bite of maror. That's it. The rest is in the context of redemption. So that's, we're supposed to tell our own stories in that same way. So now we are in Sfirat HaOmer time. So any questions or thoughts, additional comments that anybody wanted to say before we, yes, Etta.
I didn't quite understand because it's very complex, I'm sure. This is Gevorah, something
Gevorah.
Gevorah.
Yes.
What is, where would I find that allusion or?
You would find that. Do you have an art scroll Siddur?
Sure.
Okay, so it's on, if it's the regular Siddur, it's on page 286.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay,
Thank
now what
you.
I'll tell you is, unlike art scroll, which is always amazing for translating, they don't translate the Sfirot. In the English, it doesn't tell you anything about the Sfira, it only tells you the count. So it's in the Hebrew, in this where it says Sfira, and it's right in here in this box, and it gives you the Sfira, but it's not in the English on the other side.
So where would I get an understanding of what these sphera are?
Oh, okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about them, and then you can Google insights into Sfirat HaOmer on Chabad.com, I would suggest, or Aish, or Meaningful Life. Rabbi Simon Jacobson has a Sphira thing, and there are books available to have a reading for each day of what it is we're working on and how to interpret our reality. And all of these different things have kind of a different theme. Somebody one time said to me, it's like, sometimes you would know that they're talking about the same thing. Like everybody's talking about the same Sphira combination, but it sounds like all different kinds of things. It's used as a jumping off point for consciousness raising, is basically what it is, of being mindful that we are making a book. We are writing a book. So we're all authors here. We're both readers and writers of this Sphira, and we are trying to take our days and not have them be ordinal, but to have them be cardinal. We are acquiring them as we are putting together our book, just as writing a book is about writing down sentences, paragraphs, chapters, etc., until you have a message that is being the overall message. So our goal is to make ourselves worthy recipients of God's Sefer Torah, to God's Torah that is going to be a reflection of God himself. So how do we do that? Is that we work on what are called the Divine Emanations. And there are 7 Divine Emanations that we focus on. And those are from the mystical tree of life. The mystical tree of life really has 10 Sfirot. And some of you might be, I didn't make a copy of it, a picture of it, has 10, they're usually depicted as spheres, because that's what it sounds like, spheres, Sfirot, 10 circles. The top 3 circles are what are the acronym for Chabad, Chachma, Bina, and Da'at. That's where Chabad gets their name. And those refer to things having to do with the intellect. So we don't really talk about those, not that it's not intellectual, but we don't really talk about those. We talk about what are called the lower 7. These lower 7 Sfirot are the same exact ones that we talked about during Sukkot, when we talked about the Ushpizin, the guests who come to us on each day of Sukkot, which, mind you, they all 7 come all 7 days, is just one is highlighted. Again, it's everybody is there, but one is highlighted. On the Sfirot, they're all there. It's just we're highlighting. So the first week was the week, the first 7 days were the 7 days, the week of Chesed, which is the quality of kindness. Doesn't really mean kindness. It means to extend beyond our own personal boundaries, which is really what an act of kindness means, is to make ourselves bigger by including somebody else in our definition of me. So when I do that, that's called an act of kindness when it's done correctly. And so each day there was a combination. of the overall theme of kindness, plus each of the 7 other sfirot. So each day has like an overall theme and a daily theme. Now we are in the week of Gevorah. Gevorah is often translated as strength, but it doesn't really mean strength. It means control and has to do with restraint and self-control and self-discipline. That's what Gevorah is. So on the first day of Gevorah, it was chesed that is in Gevorah. How much kindness, how much of giving is in your restraint, your self-discipline, your self-control, because that can kind of go off track very easily, because it can become rigid, it can become mean, it can become self-destructive almost, when we become hostile to ourselves in our attempt to have self-restraint. You start hitting yourself. People who are hurting themselves, it's like, is Gevorah gone overboard? Gevorah gone bad? Today is Gevorah Sheba Gevorah, the strength of our the control of our self-control. So it's like, what does that mean? So our control of our self-control is asking ourselves the question, does my self-discipline, my self-restraint, my self-mastery, do I control that, or is it an addiction? Or has it become like I don't want to use the word OCD, and I'm not a therapist. Has it become not healthy? Is it appropriate? Is it the time at the right time, or is it convenient? Or is there something, do I really stick to it when I should? Or is it kind of, my self-restraint kind of goes like this and like with the wind? Or is it really that I stay on track? So there are all of those questions to ask. Are there areas in my life where I do need more self-discipline? Is it in what time I go to sleep? Is it in what I'm eating? Is it what I'm reading? Is it how I'm talking? Is it my tone of voice? Is it my relationships? Is it how I spend money? Is it, any number of things we should ask ourselves, am I exercising self-control in a healthy way in this area of my life? And does it have some inner self-control to it? Am I controlling it, or is it controlling me? Because some people get, I don't know, some things it's like, I don't know, people who go to the gym, I'm just gonna say this, but I don't even really know what I'm talking about. People go to the gym and like, I go to the gym 50 hours a day or whatever, and it's almost like they're addicted to it because there's a rush, there's an adrenaline rush that comes from that. It's like, you know what, I think your self-discipline is controlling you and you're not controlling it. And so there's even the decision of like, who's running the show here? Is it me, or is it something? So it's not really, even though it's translated as strength, it's not really that. So in Pirkei Avot, for example, it says, Ezehu Gibor, from the word Gevorah, who is strong. It's translated as strong, a person who controls himself, a person who has self-mastery. That's what strength is. So we're talking about inner strength. What's really great about all of this sfirot is that they don't have anything, I won't say they don't have anything to do with other people. They are not dependent on what anybody else is doing. It is purely self-directed. I don't need to be asking my question of how everybody else in my life is doing with their Gevorah or their chesed or their anything else. It is me, which also goes back to the counting of the Omer. You can't count for another person. You can only count for yourself, which is very interesting because we have other mitzvahs where it's called being yotzi. I can, somebody can say, I'll make kiddush for you, and all you have to do is say amen, and you're in. That's not true with the Sfirat HaOmer. Sfirat HaOmer is you shall count for yourself. This process is you write your own book. You do your own work. Keep your eyes on your own paper. So it's like all of this is very nice because a lot of our frustration in the world is based on what other people are doing that we're not happy with. And this is like, okay, there may or may not be anything I can do about that, but I can certainly be working on myself. And the working on myself is Sfirat HaOmer. Because my goal is, obviously, if somebody wants my help to be helpful to help someone else reach their goals, but they have to ask me, not that I'm going to say, I'd really like to help you reach your goals, so I'm going to tell you what you need to do. But my goal is to arrive at Sinai, to arrive on the 50th day in a different place than I left my Seder. That I'm going from being 1 to 49. So I want to mention that also, because there's another comparison to creation with the counting of the Omer. If you go back to Bereshit, to Genesis, on the very first day, it says, Vayihi Erev, Vayihi Voker. It was evening and it was morning. And then people usually say the first day, but it doesn't say the first day. It says Yom Echad, one day. Okay. The same thing. It doesn't say Yom Rishon. It doesn't say first. It says one. And then it's two. Okay. It is Yom Sheni. So then it goes into second, third, and fourth. But the first one is, first you need to know that there is an underlying oneness in all of this. And the same thing was true with the first day of the counting of the Omer. It's Hayom Yom Echad. Today is one day of the Omer. And now we are 9 days of the Omer. And we are accumulating, and hopefully we are accumulating wisdom and accomplishment, so that when we get to our place, that we are then packed and have matured and ripened and gotten to a place where what we have acquired has allowed us to turn into something else. There's also the idea of maturing. It says, why 50 days? Of all the, it's like, why that amount of time? Like, why couldn't it have been like 3 weeks? It says it takes 3 weeks to change a habit. Why couldn't it be a week? A week is a good amount of time. So there's a whole bunch of things that are around the mystical connection between 7 and 7 times 7 and 49 and like the perfection of perfection, et cetera, et cetera. But there's another comparison that has to do with apples. It says that apples ripen in 50 days. And the Jewish people are called apples. We're called a lot of other things too, but we're also called apples. It says that we go from being like nothing to being ready to eat, ripe and juicy and ready to pick. It says that's what we're trying to get to when we get to Sinai. It says this is the same thing as the idea of a child to somebody who is becoming grown up and who has matured. So there was actually a pretty quick maturing process for the Jewish people. A 49-day, 50-day process is really pretty quick to go from freed slave to person ready to stand and meet God and receive the Torah at Mount Sinai. I'd say that's I would like to have that kind of transformation in 49, 50 days. That would be amazing. But we can. This is the time for it, and we're helped along the way. So it's interesting, the Hebrew, this comes from Rabbi Shapiro, talking about that the word for a child is a katan, and that's spelled kuf tet nun, katan. It's related to the Hebrew word kuf tet, which means like it's just not kind of like how it sounds in English, like cut, like a segment, something cut up. Like a keta is a segment. A katan is somebody who it's like they only have like their little segment of their life. It's like, what is it with a child? A child, they don't have a grasp of all of reality. What does a child know? They're hungry, they're thirsty, they need a diaper change, they want a toy, they want to play, they want you to hold them. They don't have a thing like, wow, I'm like in this family and my mother and father are so devoted to me and I'm being cared for and all my needs and I'm growing. And they don't have that. It's like, wow, it's like a child is like, I only see this. I don't have a grasp of the whole picture. A person who's grown up is called a gadol. And the root of that is gimel daled. And that's related to the word like an aguda. An aguda is something that's put together. That's like one of the names of the parties, the aguda. Aguda achat is like a chain, something that's put together in one big combined aspect. So we go from a katan who sees everything just like piecemeal, to a gadol who has the idea of like, oh, I get the whole picture, which is why a great person who is called a gadol is a person who includes other people also in their definition of themselves. That's what makes them so great, because they have a different definition of what constitutes an entirety of shlemut, of wholeness and harmony. We're trying to get from that to that, from the place of a katan, the little person who left Egypt. Like, all I know is I don't have to be a slave to Pharaoh anymore. It's like, okay, that's a good start. That's true. I know that. But if that's how you're going to arrive at Mount Sinai, miss something. So that's why we need a process to go through and say, like, oh, wait a minute, I need to like put this whole thing together, this whole thing called me. I have to put myself together here. I have to understand the component parts, each of these 7 sefirot that make up me. I have to understand that. I have to work on that. I need to build that. I need to enhance it. I need to improve it. But mostly I need to put it all together, which is why we work on it in a staged process. But the goal isn't to have it be piecemeal. I mean, there's a joke about, you've heard probably of Musar, the study of character development. And there were Musar yeshivas, yeshivas that focused on Musar in Europe, and there are now today also. But it was a joke that like each week there would be like a theme. Well, you know, one would be patience, one would be on compassion, one would be whatever it was they were working on. And I guess somebody was acting kind of, you know, mean or something. They said like, you know, we're in the Musar yeshiva, is like kindness was last week's topic. You know, it's kind of like, you know, I worked on that one already. So the goal is not to be, that's called having a sequential approach. I gave last week. I was kind in yesterday's count. It's like, don't do that. Like the goal is like, no, I'm accumulating it. I'm building on it so that I'm going, which is why the numbers are going up. And we are coming each day with more and more and more. And my goal is to come with all of my days to the 50th day of all of my effort, not, it's only piecemeal for focus, but it doesn't mean you ditch what you, we ditch the focus from last week. Okay, we're done with chesed, now I'm focusing on Gevorah. It's like, no, that's not the way it works. It's like, yes, we're focusing on it, but we need to bring it along with us. And this is not easy. It's not easy work. It's harder than getting ready for Pesach. You know what? It's easy to switch dishes. It's easy to eat matzah. It's easy to change, you know, your house. It's easy to do all this stuff compared to changing ourselves, like changing dishes. If only we could change ourselves as easily as we change our dishes, we would love it. So on the outside, the work of Sfirat HaOmer, the counting the Omer, looks like nothing's happening. And yet, hopefully something profound is happening on the inside. Pesach, a lot can be happening on the outside. And the truth is, we don't know if we changed at all in the process. We just know that we're tired and sweaty. That's what we know. But we don't know if we actually accomplished anything. So that Sfirat HaOmer is the time to move in from the physical work of working to the internal work of working. And our goal is to be focused on the Sefer. What's the Sefer I'm writing each day? And how am I reading the Sefer of the experiences? How am I fitting those in? Many people, in addition to the work that they are doing on each of the Sfirot, have some sort of a gratitude journal that they keep for these 49 days to write in it of some things that they are grateful for that are related to the areas of the Sfirot. So for example, during the week of Chesed, things I'm grateful of, acts of kindness that people have done for me. I'm grateful for the acts of kindness I was able to do for others. The week of Gevorah, I'm grateful for my self-discipline that, you know, I get up every day and, you know, say Shema, or I get up every day and I call my, you know, lonely friend or something. It's like, how am I showing that I am disciplined, and I'm being grateful for that, to have it be real in our lives. After Gevorah, the next one is Tiferet, which is about harmony or beauty. That's week 3. So that's about bringing balance to my life. Okay, so people talk about their life-work balance of care for others and care for self. Do I see balance and harmony in relationships? How am I working with that? Can I be more balanced? Do I need to like yield more or yield less? And maybe, I don't know, different relationships require different things. After that is the week of Netzach, and we'll talk about them as we go through each one. Netzach is about endurance, of being able to prevail and like hang in there and not give up. And Hod is about yielding. Like, when do you say, this isn't the time, it's not the right time, I need to let go? So Hod is about that. How do I yield to another person? How do I yield to myself? How do I yield to circumstances? And then there is Yisod. Yisod is about integrity. Like, where do I exercise integrity? Where do I need to work on that? And Malchut, the final week that we will get to, is about sovereignty, about having it all together. How much do I have it all together? And are all the pieces working smoothly together? Is it a well-oiled machine? It's like having a car. You can have a car that has all the parts, but it's not running. It's like, why isn't it running? It's like, well, there's actually, a clog something in the oil, and you have to change the filter, and you put something in the gas that was really water. I mean, there could be many reasons why you have the pieces, but the whole thing isn't working. Malchut is the final question, is like, is this all working? How's this working for you? That's one of my favorite. I haven't seen him in many years, but Dr. Phil would always ask his guests who had some very self-justified reason for why they were doing whatever they were doing, and they were totally right. And he would say, and how's that working for you? It's like, it's not. That's why I'm on your show. So it's like, you can have all the parts, and it's like not working. And Malchut is like, how's this all working? And then we can come to Shavuot and say, okay, I'm ready for your Torah. In a way, now I can get more out of it than I did last year, because it's infinite, 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 and it has more to teach me and more to give me and more to tell me every single year. And so that's the process that we are working on. So today we are on Gevorah, Gevorah, of the self, of the control and restraint and discipline that is in my discipline. Does it need to be more? Does it need to be less? And how is that working? Take it into consideration of other people. Like, is my effort to do what I'm doing, is it interfering and impeding in other people's lives? How's that working? There are a lot of questions that one could be asking. One could also ask the question of, is there something in my life that would really be enhanced if I exercise just a little bit more self-discipline in this area? People who, if you're an artist, or, people who write, say, I know if I sat down to write every day, just a little bit, I could conclude the whatever. I know that if I sat down to paint and, just experimented, that I would do something. So a lot of things that we want to do, and we have the talent to do, we have the ability to do, we have the materials, we even have the time. And the piece that's missing is the self-discipline. It's like, what area of my life could be enhanced if I applied a little bit more self-discipline? I'm not talking about becoming, a drill sergeant. A little bit more self-discipline in this area would make really a significant difference. Most people feel very good when they exercise mastery and self-control. Marla.
I was looking back at my notes on one of the classes you taught before, and I love that you said we're finding the treasures of ourselves.
Absolutely.
At this time, which is, I think, a really positive way to say, some of the things that we're finding aren't so good, but if we can find those treasures and live that way, this is the time.
Very nice. And that fits in with these sfirot, because if you notice, all these sfirot are qualities that we all need and want in our lives. We're not sometimes sure of the exact recipe of how to pull it out or how to recognize it, but so that's why sometimes the gratitude journal about this helps. It's like, I did that good. I did that well. That was very successful. that I'm very grateful that I was able to exercise this and to discover this in ourselves is because like Hashem planted it in us because we're created in the image of God. But we kind of treat ourselves as undiscovered treasure. It's like, what you see is what you get. We have somebody who's in the what is like oil exploration and engineering or people who are geologists. They can tell by the terrain if it's a likely place or something that there's going to be oil or something there. They can tell, but to you or me, it just looks like a hill. So we're kind of like that. It's like, I'm just a person, I'm just a person. It's like, don't sell yourself so short. It's like Hashem invested a lot into bringing you into this world, went to a lot of trouble to create you, and wouldn't have stuck you here without a vast treasure trove of qualities to discover in yourself. And this is the time to do it. So thank you for that reminder, Marla. Thank you. So this is the time. So as we're leaving, Gabby, did you have a question?
I want to say Asher Koach. It was such a class. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gabby. So this is such a special time. And again, on the outside, people are not talking in the supermarkets. Of course, I don't know if people are talking in the supermarkets anyway because people still have masks on. But in the olden days, when women would talk in the supermarket before Pesach, everybody was like, did you get your Pesach? Did you find your matzah? Did you find your macaroons? Everyone's talking about like, where are you? Blah, 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 who's coming in? Nobody's talking about anything during Sfirat Homer. I haven't found any lively conversations of anybody, meeting and saying, how are you doing on Sfirat Homer? It's like, what are you up to? Like, how's that chesed and your Gevorah thing going? First of all, it's not exactly a question you can ask because it implies a criticism. So how's that Gevorah going in your life? I think you could use a little bit more. So it's not necessarily a question for a conversation, but maybe it should be of like, maybe we can have that conversation over the next weeks of asking ourselves, what are the questions that we should be asking ourselves? And just knowing that we're sharing the journey with other people. And that there is a blessing. A blessing is said every single day for this count because we're trying to create a wholeness out of it. We're trying to go from a katan of just like the keta, little segments, to a gadol, a fully mature, ripe apple, juicy, ready to stand at Sinai. And it's a process. And I think that's the other thing is, yes, it is not ordinal. We're not talking about sequential, but we are talking about time needed. That just like anything that is growing, things that grow need time. Now, building schedules can be hurried along. You can put something on the fast track for building, but you can't put something on a fast track for growing. It's like, no matter what, no matter how much in a hurry we get, pregnancy is 9 months. You don't get to say, you know what, I really just don't have 9 months. I've got about like 3. So can we just like move this along? It's like, no, you cannot. So that is part of it also, is the patience with the process of our own development, because sometimes it can be a little unnerving to do a close look at ourselves while we're looking for the treasure. As Marla said, sometimes we find things that aren't so great also as we're doing a full inventory. That we also need to be patient for the process, and that God isn't asking us to do anything more than what's on our plate today. So he's not saying, well, you know what, you're on day 9, but you realize you've got 41 more days going that you've got to work on. It's like, we're not doing 41 days. We're not doing yesterday, and we're not doing tomorrow. We're doing today. And that is something that should give us also a sense of strength, enthusiasm, not being overwhelmed, and to say, I'm doing today's work today. And that's all I need to do. Thank God. Because I don't know if you're like me, but I spend a lot of time. I said to somebody today, it feels like it's the end of April. It's only April 6th or whatever day it is. It's like, well, in my life, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday kind of go together as a block. And then it's Shabbos. And next week is the middle of April, which is almost like it's the end of April. So, which means it's really almost like summer, which means like Rosh Hashanah is coming. So, I mean, it's like in our heads, we are like always going to someplace else. And it's very hard to just be. So that's the other thing that the Sfirat Homer is like, just be in today. You don't really have to worry about all these other things. because those are not on your plate today. Today is Gevorah Gevorah, and that's all you really need to be focused on. And if you would just give all of that, I'm talking to myself, if I would just give all of that my focus, some of these other things would take care of themselves anyway. And I don't even have control over them anyway. So I might as well exercise the Gevorah over who I really have Gevorah and control over, which is me, myself, and I. Even though I would like to have control over, other people, the community, and the world, that hasn't really yet been delegated to me. So I think I'll start with myself. So that's the other thing. So all the things in Pirkei Avot talk about, who is wealthy? A person who is happy with their portion. Who is honored? A person who honors other people. Who is strong? A person who has self-control. Who is wise? A person who learns from other people. Every single one of those things is self-determined and has nothing to do with what other people are doing, which means that we can be wealthy, honored, wise, and whatever, happy. Well, let's see, wealthy, wise, honored, what was the other thing? And in control, all by myself. And that's great, because that gives me a sense of centeredness for which I am aiming. So with that, we will reach Mount Sinai and we will receive the Torah, God's Sefer, for telling us how to understand the Sefer of our lives, that we are both writing and reading as we count our days, and we count them as we accumulate them. And we should be merit to accumulate not just these 49 days, but many, many days to 120.
Amen.
Thank you. If anybody, any comments or other questions, thank you for the sweet emojis. All right, it's so great to see everybody. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week and enjoy the rest of, I know one thing I want to let you know about is starting in the month of Nisan, which we are in, is when you see I hadn't planned on saying this, so let me see if I can find it. If you see a fruit tree flowering, there is a special blessing to say. And let me just see if I can find it here very quickly. You can also Google that.
Right, written would be great.
I'm sorry, Gabi?
Can you email it to us?
You know what? I'll give you the, I'm happy to. I don't really have the email for everybody because it's on the Jewish experience, but I'll tell you what the blessing says. You only recite it once, and you recite it when you see a fruit tree flowering, and it doesn't have to be a fruit you like. So it can be like a crabapple. It's fine. It doesn't have to be like a pear or peach. It says, "Blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, for nothing is lacking in his universe, and he created in it good creatures and good trees to cause mankind pleasure with them." It's on page 229 of the regular art scroll. I'm sure you could also Google that. And the tree does not have to belong to you. It can be in the public. It doesn't have to be your tree. It can be anybody's tree. Somebody posted on our Eastside Women's chat, does anybody have a flowering tree, and can you give me an address so I can come? It's like, no, not yet, almost. So that's what we're waiting for next, is to be able to say that blessing, to celebrate growth, just as we're celebrating our own growth at this time during the month of Nisan.
Does it say in Hebrew too?
Yeah, yes, in the art scroll, yes, it does.
And
Yes.
what's the name of the bracha, if I look for it?
I'm sorry, what did you say, Gabi?
Name of the bracha, if we look for it?
It's under the section blessings of praise and gratitude, and it's blessings over phenomena and events. So that's what you would see it in the art scroll table of contents. But in the regular art scroll Siddur, it's on page 228 and 229. And it's about close to the bottom of the page.
It's also on Chabad.org. And if you just type in blessing on budding fruit trees, it's right there.
Thank God for Chabad.org.
Thank you. Thank God for the computer.
And thank God for the computer. I know, information at our fingertips.
At your fingertips.
That's right.
What does it say? Blessing for a fruit tree? Is that what you
Yes,
said?
for blooming fruit tree.
Yes.
Blooming.
Yep, just type it in.
Okay.
It says budding, but it's
Yeah,
okay.
budding. Yes, budding fruit tree. And
Thank
I'll just
you.
say one thing, I know we're a little over, is that we say it's like Hashem created this world for our pleasure. So yes, you can say, well, the birds and the bees, they need this. And it's like, could have arranged it in some way that doesn't attract us. It was given for us for pleasure. And so when we take a moment and open our eyes, then we can see like that we take pleasure in one little blossom. It's like, do you realize how many blossoms there are of fruit trees in the world? And yet to stop and take notice of one just as it's opening, like that's us. It's like, I want to be like that blossom, because that's what we all are doing. We are all in the process of blossoming. All right, ladies, thank you so much for
Thank you,
joining
Ellyn.
me.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ellyn.
My pleasure. Thank you, Della.
Very
All right, take care, everybody. Have a good rest of your week.
You too.
See you in the middle of April.
Shavua or
It's almost time for Shabbos. Okay.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah, right? It's like the week just went like that.
That's how I work. Bye.
It's very tiring.
Yeah.
Some days I wake up and I'm not sure what season it is. I wake up and I'm like, wait a minute, do we already have summer? Or like, no, my head had summer, but we didn't really have it.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye, Wendy. Hi, Tina.